Light and Slim. 6 colors. Debut.
こんなことになってんぞ PlayStation Vita!
Welcome back to Retro Rebound. In today's video, you're looking at the greatest handheld that ever lived, and you're wondering to yourself, should I buy one in 2024? That, or you're feeling really nostalgic for the PS Vita and just want to go down memory lane, I got you covered either way. The PS Vita is right up there in my top 3 favorite handhelds of all time, the only one surpassing it being the Game Boy Advance. But there is a special comfort that the PS Vita brings me. I remember in the early 20-teens, I was in my first years of college, and it was really nice just to hunker down with this handheld after a long day of classes and just get lost in a plethora of worlds. Over time, PlayStation has ported a number of games over to the PS4, thus devaluing the library of the PS Vita. So I'm here to show you a number of things today. Games that aren't region locked that may be of interest to you, games that are still exclusive, games that I think play best on Vita, PlayStation classics available on Vita, what's the state of the PSN on Vita, which version of the PS Vita is worth your time, what accessories should you pick up. I'm here to answer everything for you because I am obsessed. So let's get into it. We're not going to do a full history lesson of the PS Vita. I feel 1,000,001 content creators have already done that. Let's just run down the fun facts. But before any of that, we got to talk about today's sponsor. The following video is sponsored by Rakuten. Rakuten is the largest cashback site which partners with over 3,500 of the biggest name brands like Target, Nike, Kohl's, Walmart, Adidas, and so many more to bring you cashback, coupons, and promo codes all for free. Sounds great, right? All you do is click through the links found on Rakuten as you normally would and shop on the websites as you normally would, or use their great browser extension. Now, I was recently introduced to Rakuten, but I do not want to go back to a life without it. For example, I shop on Target all the time. Groceries, brand new games, you name it, your boy is on Target. To know that Rakuten is partnered up with them, meaning that I'm going to get cash back for just doing the shopping I normally do, is such a great deal. And guess what? You get the better deal, because if you sign up by clicking the link in the description down below, you get an exclusive 10% cashback referral boost on top of normal rates. And if you shop with Rakuten during their Festival of Savings event, May 6th to the 14th, where I'm going to be picking up some dog supplies, you get an additional 10% boost on top of the base 15% cashback deal. This means up to 25% cashback at certain retailers. So what are you waiting for? Link down below. Check out Rakuten. Shout out to them for sponsoring today's video. You have the PS Vita 1000, or the OLED is what we're going to call it for the rest of the video. And you also have here the PS Vita Slim, or the PS Vita 2000. We'll just call this the PS Vita Slim. You have these two models, the OLED coming first, the Slim being the cheaper made model designed to get more people through the door as the life cycle of the system went on. And there are differences between the two. As I already stated, one has an OLED screen, the other is an LCD screen. So think of it a lot like the Nintendo Switch. The Slim version is lighter, as well as using a micro USB for charging, whereas when you see here with the PS Vita OLED, there is a proprietary charger. So this one is something that you just can't buy anywhere. And this is really important because when I was getting ready for this video, actually, I found this brand new micro USB here because my PS Vita Slim wasn't charging. And sometimes the Vitas have battery issues as they get older. I've heard stories of some even exploding, not the system, but like the actual battery exploding inside the system, thus corrupting it. And so I was a little bit worried that it happened to me, but I figured let's just try a factory reset and then switch out the wires, and that was all I had to do, and it works just fine again. So just not having to rely on proprietary tech, something that led to the death of the Vita, is a great plus for the PS Vita Slim. Battery life differs a bit as well. The OLED lasts about 3 to 4 hours, where the PS Vita Slim can last 5 to 6, even upwards of 7, depending on what you're playing. For me, battery life never really mattered, just because like 3 hours even is plenty for me to just sit down and game in a straight session before I find myself doing something else or something's calling my attention at that time. So 3 hours is always plenty. 4 is just enough as well. But if you are looking for the maximum amount of battery life, you're going to want to go with the Slim. The OLED also had 3G built into it. If that was something that was interesting to you, that's really a non-factor now. It was designed to let you play multiplayer games literally on the go. That's obviously not what the Vita managed to accomplish, but it was a big selling point with AT&T involved. The other thing you should be aware of is download times on the Vita, whatever version you have, is still pretty dreadful, where even a 1 gigabyte game with my extremely fast internet can take upwards of 40 minutes. Here's me downloading Dissidia, and you can see, yeah, it's gonna take a little bit. It's also one of those old handhelds where positioning matters, where you need to be close to your router to make sure that this thing doesn't stop downloading or has a slower download. Like it's like that, yeah. So just keep that in mind, that download times are not going to be in your favor. And last but not least, I just wanted to point out this little Reddit theory here from user Viva La Vida, who said that some of the later Slim models distributed in 2015/16 might have had inferior speakers than the ones made in 2014. It's unconfirmed, but still worth pointing out. I did some testing myself. The differences are mild. I don't think it's anything that's going to define a purchase for you. Now, as for accessories, this is something you want to keep in mind. You have to buy a memory card for your PS Vita, and you can't just buy an SD memory card, as I'm sure you've already heard a million times before. So just keep that in mind. I also mentioned accessories like, hey, this grip here. You're gonna see in a lot of the gameplay throughout this entire video when I'm using my OLED, I have this grip attached to it. As you see, it's already worn down. Couldn't imagine the Vita without this thing. As someone who has pretty decent sized hands here, it's pretty tough using the Vita without a grip. I would get a lot of pain inside here. Even after dozens of hours of using it, I was having a real tough time with the Vita. With any games that demanded action, I highly recommend you get yourself a grip for your PS Vita. It's good for hitting the triggers. It's good for just longer play sessions. It is borderline necessary in my opinion. There's also the PlayStation TV. Some of the games I'm going to show you here in a moment, you're going to see PlayStation TV compatible. One of the efforts PlayStation made to continue to keep the PS Vita relevant was allowing you to play it on your television. And unfortunately, I don't have one to show you here today, but you can actually play certain Vita games. If it says it on the box that they're compatible, you can play them on the PS Vita TV. So just keep an eye out for that if you want to expand from not just the handheld, but playing these handheld games on your television. Okay, those are the PlayStation Vita fun facts. You know enough now about the system if you weren't already informed. Let's talk about the most important part, the games. I know there's a lot of question marks surrounding the PS Vita right now on whether or not it's worth a purchase. If you go on eBay as of this moment in time, you can find them ranging from $150 if they're just kind of being resold with the system, maybe a game or two, the charger, no memory card, or if you're going full, complete in box, pretty much untouched, you're pushing closer to $300. But it's gonna fall somewhere in that range. So it's not the most cheap handheld to pick up, but quite frankly, I'm surprised that the value hasn't moved much. But a big reason for that, I imagine, is because the library has been bled dry by PlayStation. Even very much high quality PlayStation Vita exclusives like Tearaway, which were all built entirely around the PS Vita, have been ripped from this system. So what remains? Well, there's actually a few unique things out there. I've shown the Ratchet & Clank HD collection as an example here on this channel. You can get this over on the PlayStation 3, but the Vita got it not in the United States. Fortunately, the PlayStation Vita isn't region locked, so I found this at my local game shop and I made sure, like, is this region locked? And it's not. And so I picked this bad boy up, and yeah, I have Ratchet & Clank HD 1 through 3 here on my Vita on the go. So there's a lot of great options out there for you to pick up that are beyond the borders, if you will. If you want to go out there and get a game that was only released in the EU or Japan, you can go ahead and do so. And you'll get moments like this where you didn't get a Ratchet & Clank trilogy on Vita here in the US. So this to me was a really cool score at my local game shop, but just a reminder of how far the Vita's library can reach. Some of my favorite games to play on the Vita, I guess maybe that ties to the comfort it gives me, is those kind of HD collections. I loved playing Metal Gear Solid HD. I loved playing games like Sly Cooper HD. You can find all of these and then some here on the PlayStation Vita. But I just wanted to make sure for those of you who are concerned about any region locking that you can find some pretty cool gems on the Vita this way. But what's still exclusive? What is worth your time? Well, fortunately for you, I have a nice stack of games here in front of me. Let's start off with Army Cores of Hell. This is from Square Enix, and it is a game that basically is a blend of Pikmin and Overlord, except it's really gory and it also has heavy metal music. It's really all off the walls, and I found it pretty charming. It was released around the launch time, and all these games I'm going to show you for the most part are actually pretty cheap to pick up. So the Vita library won't really break the bank too much if you're making the big investment here. This probably isn't the creme de la creme, if you will, pickup for the PlayStation Vita, but it's still exclusive and definitely worth calling out, as I found it to be a good time. I should also add here that part of the allure to me of the PS Vita are the trophies. One thing you should be aware of with Army Cores of Hell is that for some reason, I have never seen this with a game ever in my many years of using the PS Vita. yeah, you can't pop trophies on this one if someone already had a save data activated on it. I guess this is to prevent like the trading of game cards and then me loading it into my Vita and popping all the trophies retroactively and getting a free platinum and not really buying the game. I'm not entirely sure what the rationale behind this was, but I tried going into my system memory, removing it, and I had no luck at all. So just keep this in mind if you're picking this one up. It might be best downloaded on the PlayStation Network. Next, I want to tell you about Batman Arkham Origins Blackgate. I'm cheating a little bit with this one, I won't lie. This is on the 3DS, but I think it plays best on Vita, not just because of the screen, but again, the form factor. Unless you have a new Nintendo 3DS, then you can kind of make the argument that you can pick your poison there. But I always think of the Vita with Arkham Origins Blackgate. This is a 2.5D Metroidvania title that takes place a couple months after Arkham Origins, one of the most underrated Batman games ever. It's got free flow combat, it's got wonderful comic book cutscenes. I think the Vita was subjected to a lot of almost, I would say, unfair reviews. Like a lot of the games I'm going to tell you about, if you go and look up the reviews, pretty middling, but every game I've laid my hands on that got pretty middling reviews during that period of time, I found insanely charming and enjoyable, and this was one of them. So if you're looking for a Batman handheld fix, you can get that here on Vita, but keep in mind, you can also get it on 3DS. So I'm done cheating now. Let's keep it real. Let's talk about Freedom Wars, one of the most criminally overlooked video games ever, in my opinion. One of the things that the Vita was attached to was Monster Hunter clones. Everyone said because the 3DS had Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate, that the PlayStation Vita could not thrive in this handheld ecosystem unless it had its Monster Hunter clone. And so we're going to talk about two that I think are pretty good. One of them being Freedom Wars, where, as you would imagine with the name suggesting, you have been incarcerated and you have a sentence that you need to whittle away from. And so how do you do that but completing missions? And as you finish tasks, your life sentence will go down and down and down and down. And so you can create your own character. I made Darth Revan. My accessory, or your pawn, or whatever you want to call it, is Cloud. So yeah, you can have a lot of fun customizing in this game. I really enjoyed that. There's a ton of meta games like building weapons, and while those things are happening in the background, you're outrunning missions. There's 4-player co-op. You can play online. There's still some people playing this game online. There's actually a few games people are playing online, like Killzone Mercenary. You can still find a couple of matches online, and that's one of the most beautiful looking Vita games. Unfortunately, I don't have it complete in box, which I didn't realize until filming this video, so we're gonna right that wrong, but no doubt that that's one that should be in your collection. Back to Freedom Wars though, you're gonna see you're attaching yourself to body parts of these giant beasts, flinging yourself at them. There's guns in here. It is very much a sci-fi Monster Hunter style game and 100% worth your time. I love this game so much. It comes from Japan Studio. It's not gonna have English voice acting, but honestly, I don't think that matters at all. You should really check this one out if you're gonna pick up a Vita. I love the Resistance series. I wish that Insomniac were making more of them, or at least we were getting spin-offs of it. I think the world is so interesting. This post-World War II era shooter against mutated creatures and awesome weapons, and especially their alt modes. And so that's basically this on the go in Resistance Burning Skies, which is a first-person shooter. This was released around the launch window as well, meaning that it's a little gimmicky. You're gonna find some early PS Vita titles making heavy usage of the touchscreen, swipe mechanics, that sort of thing. And it was a big complaint when the system had come out. We just wanna play the games. Again, I like the gimmicks. I think it makes use of them in really fun ways. They don't always have to overdo it, but I think it's great that the system is being used to its max potential. Many would disagree with that. I mentioned we have multiple Monster Hunter style games. The other one is Soul Sacrifice, another criminally overlooked one, and also I think underrated. Some of the reviews for this game were just flat out bad as far as I was concerned. So Soul Sacrifice, you find this book and it requires you to sacrifice your limbs in order to summon certain powers. You make a lot of choices throughout the game of what creatures you want to save and sacrifice. It has 4-player co-op again. It's an absolute blast, and the gameplay feels really slick for its time. I also feel like the Vita is a JRPG and visual novel machine. We'll talk more about some of the visual novels later, but when it comes to JRPGs, Tales of Hearts R is still stuck on handheld devices. Originally releasing on the DS many years before the Vita, this one got ported in this sort of remake style only to the Vita. It's still there, and this is a great one in my opinion. It's classic Tales of action combat, a heartfelt story. You're not gonna think it's the best game ever, but I beat in about 32 hours when I loaded up my New Game Plus save file. They give you a lot of bonuses to reload your game. I will warn you that the trophies aren't fantastic in this game, but otherwise it is a really fun time with a great cast of characters. What's a PlayStation system without Uncharted? Uncharted Golden Abyss from Bend Studio is also one that I feel got undeservedly slammed. It's arguably the longest game in the Uncharted franchise too, going well above 20 hours if it's your first time playing it through, which may sound a bit agonizing to some, but I really appreciated it. This was a launch title. This is one of the big selling points for the PS Vita, and I thought it was insanely impressive what they pulled off here. You're gonna be able to have some cool quality of life features that are on the Vita, like instead of holding up to scale every bit of the building, you just swipe your finger and up you go. It just traces a path for you. I think that stuff is great. It can be a little gimmicky at times, like when you're doing, say, stealth takedowns, press the touch button. It also shines a light on the shorter thumbsticks for the PS Vita being a bit tough for shooters. I mean, this will be apparent in games like I've mentioned before, such as Freedom Wars as well as Resistance. You're gonna have a little bit of an adjustment period with the aiming in this game. I was never really quick on the sticks when it came to the PS Vita, and so I play it like it's my first time picking up the game ever. And so you'll see my aim is pretty bad in Uncharted, but still, I think this is a great time and an absolute must-own, and it's a game that still has yet to get ported from the PS Vita to consoles, and I don't think it ever will. You could actually clean off certain artifacts you find by using the touchscreen, the back touchpad. Like, I think it's a really creative game with how it uses the Vita. The last game, which also got pretty poor reviews, but I like as well, surprise, surprise, is Unit 13. Unit 13 is a third-person shooter that kind of reminds me of the SOCOM days, and we haven't had SOCOM in a long while. I miss SOCOM, so I feel this one's gonna hit a special spot for a lot of you out there. You're gonna run missions solo, much like many of the PS Vita games. You do have a multiplayer option here as well, but it's a great third-person shooter, and I personally enjoyed running missions on it, gathering points, getting points for headshots, collecting things. It's a really good time again. So yeah, as you can tell, that's a small sampling of a very large list of games that are still exclusive on the platform that aren't your very niche visual novel games. But there's also things you should be on the lookout for. PS3 ports that are kind of shoddy. There are moments you'll see a game on your PS Vita and go, oh, that sounds like a good time on the go. For me, as a massive Spider-Man fan, as many of you know here on Retro Rebound, we've covered many Spider-Man games. I love Amazing Spider-Man 1. I think it's one of the closest games we got to that Batman Arkham style Spider-Man game before obviously Insomniac took over. And this game is available on Vita, and I actually burst out laughing when I started playing it because I remember playing this on Christmas Eve a couple of years ago and thinking, hey, that was a pretty good time. And like any set of bad frame rate, you'll adjust eventually. But yeah, a full open world Spider-Man game doesn't really run the best on the PS Vitas.
Oh my god, this is so bad. I forgot how bad this was. How did I get this far in the game?
Be warned that sometimes the PS3 ports aren't great. You should check out reviews. There are times that they're really good though, like Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3. This game not only still looks incredible to this day thanks to its wonderful art style, but runs super well, and to me has always been the best place to play MVC3. I adore this game. I always love playing Zero, especially when you got Johnny Young Bosch as the voice actor for him. He sounds so sick. That's my Zero, man, so I love it. But keep in mind while you're game hunting, do know that you should be aware of the download code packaged in, because not only can you not redeem these download codes, even if you bought it brand spanking new, sealed in the box, but there are some games that'll be like Final Fantasy X and X-2, and you'll see in the bottom right corner that it's warning you, oh, if you want X-2, you're gonna have to download that. Only on the cartridge is Final Fantasy X. You'll have to download X-2, and that's especially troublesome if on the PSN you didn't redeem that in time. Worse yet, PlayStation tried to take down the PSN, something we'll get into in a little bit, so the only way to access that when it inevitably happens is if it's available in your download list, so you probably want to hustle and get it right away. Same thing goes for a game like Sly Cooper. Sly 1 and 2 HD are on the Vita and they play phenomenally well, but Sly 3 is a separate download, so be aware of that. The PS Vita to me also fits really well in this pocket of these games just play best on this system, right? So there are games that have been ported off the system for many years, but I would still only play those entries here on Vita if I had that option, or if I was picking up this series for the first time, I'd actually recommend, if you have a Vita, playing them there. I'm talking about games like Danganronpa. Vita is the home to phenomenal visual novels, from Steins Gate to Virtue's Last Reward, and really the entirety of the Zero Escape trilogy, as well as the entirety of the Danganronpa trilogy. You see, Danganronpa was really born and raised on the Vita. That's where a lot of its popularity stems from, and then it was eventually brought to PC and then PlayStation, and so it's a lot more relevant nowadays. But this is a game that, when it was available on PS4, I bought my collector's edition on Vita without hesitation. I can't imagine playing Danganronpa on a big screen. I love cozying up in a dark room and playing a chapter of one of the darkest written video game series ever. So yes, you can play Danganronpa on a console that you likely own by this point in time. But to me, at least, Danganronpa is most worth it when you are playing it on the Vita. It's like an amazing book, and that goes for all these other visual novels I had mentioned. There are also other games like Persona 4 Golden. Even when I get my complete in-box copy from Limited Run Games for Persona 4 Golden, I'm never going to play that game on consoles. I will always play it on the Vita. That's where I was introduced to Persona for the first time ever. I'll always associate Persona 4 Golden as a Vita game. And Persona is a phenomenal handheld experience. In fact, Persona 3 Portable was the next game I played immediately after 4 Golden. I think Persona translated really well to consoles, but these games are extremely long. Having them on the go is phenomenal, and I think 4 Golden is a great pick for that. There's also games that have been remastered over on PS4 that I would still recommend on Vita, like Gravity Rush. This was one of the most unique exclusives that came to the PlayStation Vita, where you literally use gravity to your advantage, and it opens up with an apple falling, and it just tells the whole story right there. But you will fall toward your enemies to do attacks. You'll use the camera on the Vita to rotate things around and see your environment. It's really wacky and creative and different. I love Kat as one of those heads of PlayStation that just never got enough light shined on her. So this is another game that I think just plays phenomenally well on Vita. Now, let's say you haven't splashed big time on the physical collection, or you don't really have the room for it. How available is the PSN to you right now? You may remember a number of years ago, PlayStation was halted by all of the fans when they tried to tear down not only the PS3 store, but the PS Vita store. And there was a point in time where a lot of the images and the thumbnails that you'd find in the PlayStation store were actually like corrupted images. I mean, the store was literally in shambles. Something has clearly changed since then, because when I went in there now, everything looks as it once did. Here's where you can access, as you'd imagine, all of the PS Vita games that released digitally, but more importantly, this is where you can access PS1 classics and PSP games that were available on the platform. If you were to take advantage of anything on the Vita, I would say it's investing in the PS1 classics and PSP games available there. Games like Dissidia are phenomenal here on Vita. Games like Persona 3 Portable I talked about earlier are phenomenal on Vita. Games like Mega Man Legends are available on Vita. You can play the Mega Man X games on Vita. Breath of Fire 3 and 4 is available on Vita. There's a lot of great options there for you, and this rounds out the system from just being this kind of niche Vita library that admittedly sometimes you just have to accept some of the games are like 7 out of 10s, but they're really charming, into this all-encompassing PlayStation machine that has some really cool back compat options available to you, so long as you have a big enough memory card to download them on. For me, I've been messing around with about 16 gigs for my entire lifespan on the Vita, and I've never really needed more than that because I'm usually not playing that many games at a single time on my Vita. So I will just cycle them out and delete them. And since the download list is always available, even when the PSN was going down, they said that our games would be downloadable via the download list. You can still go in there and snag them anytime you want. So I was never really concerned about deleting them either. And so there you have it. That's the PS Vita in 2024. I think it's still insanely worth it. I'm extremely biased, no doubt about it, but I think that this is such a good time, especially if you love popping trophies. This is a great system for it. I think there's so much charm to it, so many unique titles attached to it. And yeah, it does bring me a sense of comfort anytime I think about playing the Vita and think about that time in my life. There is a great memory attached to it. But nonetheless, I do highly recommend you pick up a Vita. And if you do so, let me know down below. Otherwise, if you already have one, chime in, man. Let everyone know how great it is. Or if you thought it was bad, then fair play. Let them know how bad you thought it was. But with that, ladies and gentlemen, take excellent care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next Retro Rebound. Peace